So you got yourself a new camera because you want to become a photographer, only now you have no idea what to actually take photos of.
Wow, that's good.
It sounds like you are in desperate need of a photography project to help showcase your skills and also to give your photos a bit of focus and a direction. But how do you even go about starting a photography project? The first thing you're going to need for a photography project is actually an idea. In my case, as you may well know, I am a big dog person. They've always been a big part of my photography, and I shoot them all over the world whenever I have the opportunity. So when I landed on my current project, dogs kind of popped up their heads and made it blindingly obvious the project I should go for. I've had a few different photography project ideas around dogs in the past, but they always felt a little bit generic and not super personal to me, until I finally landed on this idea of dogs with jobs. This popped into my head a few months ago, and it was only after I started researching it, I found out there was actually a TV series in the year 2000 under the same name with a similar concept. So maybe not as unique to me as I had hoped, but I'm still going forward with this project, and for the moment, I'm sticking with the name. Maybe we have to change it later for legal reasons. With your idea in place, you need to start figuring out how to put you and your camera in the right locations with the right subjects to actually start executing this project. So in my particular case, this meant contacting people who work with working dogs, either training them or working with them professionally, and figuring out how I can get in the same space as them to be able to photograph them either on the job or while they're doing a training day. I started simply by just cold emailing a few different dog trainers in the southwest of England while we were staying there for a bit, and I managed to get a couple of emails out to some working dog trainers around herding dogs, gun dogs, etc. And luckily, despite all of the non-responses I got, I also got one response from a lovely trainer named Beth, who works training sheepdogs. Beth was more than happy to let me and Lisa actually shadow a morning training session with her two dogs and also a couple of dogs from one of her clients who she'd worked with for a long time. In return, I would then send all of the images you're going to see in this video to Beth and her client for them to use however they like. For me, that was a simple exchange. I get to gather some photos for this project, and they have the photos to use for advertising the website and whatever else they might need. The last thing you're going to need is actually that camera. You may have already just picked one up, or maybe you're considering picking one up, and actually, in my case, I had just done a massive dump. No, not in the bathroom, but actually I just got rid of a bunch of camera gear that I'd ended up acquiring and lugging around in my luggage, and decided to get rid of that and then actually pick up a great deal on a new camera. I replaced my main camera, which was a increasingly glitchy Sony a7C II that was quite scuffed on the exterior as well, and decided to go for a new, a bit larger, but a bit better Sony a7 IV. Enter Sky and Dev, two gorgeous border collie sheepdogs trained by Beth. I think combined, these two dogs have more brain cells than this photographer. So for each set of dogs and their trainer in different professions, I know that I definitely want like some portrait shots as kind of the header for each section of this project. Kind of like the hero shot. And luckily, on this particular occasion, with Sky and Dev being the most responsive dogs I've ever met in my life, Beth was easily able just to get them to pose alongside her when we got these first couple of shots, before they'd actually started working or herding any sheep. And I think these actual poses and compositions are exactly what I was after. With the portraits pretty much in the bag, I had a couple of ideas for specific sort of action mid-herding shots that I really wanted to get with at least one of the dogs here. And we first started dabbling around the field, letting Sky sort of kick off the session while Dev was resting, and having Sky kind of herding the sheep in different parts of the field. And of course we were going between bright, harsh sunlight and then also into the shade a little bit. We did get one very interesting moment with Sky kind of standing on the sheep, which is kind of when she holds them in position, and they were kind of into a corner of the field. One of them did then kind of try and break away, but Sky quickly, very like impressively controlled the sheep and brought it back. And honestly, seeing the dogs work in this way close up was like mesmerizing. I'd seen like videos and stuff here and there and like from a distance, but actually getting to be right up there with them was an amazing experience. And these shots I got with Sky here were okay, but they weren't exactly what I had in my head. I knew I kind of wanted a shot similar to this, but with the sheep in the foreground, very much filling the entire lower third foreground of the frame. So we started to do something a little bit differently once we started working with Dev. We tried moving to a large shady patch underneath this very big tree at the bottom of the field once we'd started working with Dev, herding all of the sheep together into a slightly different part of the field. And while Dev was standing on the sheep, I was overhead above like the little mini flock of sheep and just trying to frame them in the foreground while having Dev sort of in control in the background.
What do you mean you want me to go
I tried this both in landscape and portrait orientation. And personally, I think the portrait orientation kind of lends more to this composition because it is very much a top to bottom composition, much more than a left to right composition. I always think if the information goes from top to bottom, portrait is often the preferred orientation, whereas if the information is going from left to right, landscape is a little bit better. So here we have all of the sheep in the foreground, but slightly soft and out of focus, with Dev nice and sharp in the top of the frame. And I think it's also the size difference between all of the individual sheep and also together as a flock. And then this one pretty small border collie that is just hyper focused, in control, loving life. I really like this image. Not long later, Dev was in a similar position, only this time we actually had the sheep all the way up against the bush. So I wasn't now behind the sheep, instead I was behind Dev. And Dev was incredibly comfortable with you getting right close while he was focusing on doing something. He's just there, kind of, he would naturally just stand on the sheep and, you know, guard them on his own. But he's also incredibly, like, well-behaved, incredibly responsive, and listening to Beth's commands. So while he was there, she just had him lying down, and I was able to get this kind of over the head, almost POV shot from Dev's perspective, like looking down his back and through his ears at the sheep. And I really like this shot. I always like having it with the foreground out of focus, but giving us some context information and perspective. And I think looking down Dev's ears like this at the sheep, it feels like looking down the crosshairs of an old weapon. Only in this situation, the weapon is like a high energy border collie obsessed with herding sheep. So as a pair of images, I really like what these two particular shots do when it comes to the relationship between the sheep and the sheep dogs in the herding process. They're both in portrait orientation, but I do have them in landscape as well. And I think these would work towards a final project later. Having this kind of shift of perspective is kind of like one front on of the sheepdog and then the other sort of the point of view of the sheepdog. These kind of work, I could definitely imagine these in a single page spread in a book or as part of an exhibition. And I also really like that you are watching this video and have watched this far already. If you like days of photography like this and you want to see more videos like this on YouTube, please remember to like this video, drop a hype if you're on mobile right now, and remember to subscribe to the channel. It makes a massive difference in getting videos like this out to more people interested in photography. Also, comment below if you've got an idea for a project of your own. I'm sure we'd all like to know what you're into and maybe offer some advice in the comments. Why did I actually start this Dogs with Jobs photography project in the first place? Well, to be completely honest with you, I was burnt out beyond belief for the last year. Pretty much since we left Manchester and started traveling full time, I've just not had the strongest connection with my photography or with the videos I've been making, to be honest. It's felt much more like a job and much less something that I'm truly enjoying, and it was not very fun. I found myself shooting stuff because I thought I should, rather than shooting stuff that I was really, really interested in. So this Dogs with Jobs photography project has already made me feel a much stronger connection to my images, especially because I get to share them with other people, like the trainers, like Beth. That gives me a lot more satisfaction than just photos to throw up on the gram, which doesn't really bring me any joy whatsoever. I realized that the sort of photography that I like doing the most, that really drives me to do more of it, is the photography that creates connections. And this can be taking a portrait of someone in the street and then sharing it with them later. Maybe you follow each other online, keep up with what they're doing, you sort of made a connection through photography in the real world. But this Dogs with Jobs project, I think, is kind of a project that brings out all the best sides of photography for me. It connects me back to what first sort of got me taking photos, which were my dogs growing up, and it also gives me a reason to share things with new people that I might meet in different parts of the world. And whether it's a dog portrait on the street of just a normal everyday domestic dog, that's great, share the photo with them. But the Dogs with Jobs project also kind of brings eyes onto different roles that dogs play in people's lives around the world that actually gets me quite excited, and I'm actually fairly passionate about, and it gives me something I'm already more interested in the topic and the subject itself beyond just the photography. Sometimes I think we can look at photography and cameras too much as tools and not as kind of a medium. Like it's a medium for connection, and it's a medium for creating something much more than it is a tool for capturing something. It's more like, it's not a tool, it's a paintbrush. Do you know what I mean? And I like the idea of using a camera as a paintbrush to tell a story, to make connections. For me, that's more fulfilling. When it comes to you choosing your photography project, probably my strongest advice for what subject to focus on would be to focus on what feels authentic to you. Not what you think looks cool or sounds cool or feels highbrow or like it would be cool in like the artistic photography space. I think the more you try and cater to the audience and to the gatekeepers or whatever else, the more you're going to stray away from actually who you are. And I know dogs are a pretty basic interest, like I'm not special, I understand that. But for me, I think you can see how much I enjoy photographing dogs and how much interest I actually have in the subject. Whereas I think if I was to go and try and photograph something like motorsports, which I'm partially interested in, pretty limited, but still, it would feel like performative, or it would feel inauthentic. Maybe I could shoot a couple of days and then I would kind of not be as bothered anymore. So I think for any project you're considering, really try and think, what would I shoot if no one paid me? And can I imagine doing that for an extended period of time? That way you're going to find something you actually want to shoot and you actually want to share with people from your own perspective. Dogs have always been a big part of my life, so when it comes to me choosing a project to put out to the world, this feels like the most honest and personal thing I can do. And I think that's what we should be doing with photography, is just try to be honest, because you can't hide. Sure, you can edit and whatever, but I think you want to do what feels true, and then that way you're actually going to make something that feels much more like you. And I accidentally just rhymed. So on that rather cringy bombshell, I would like you to tell me in the comments below, what project would you start with your new camera? You've just picked one up, maybe for the first time, maybe it's your 6th camera or your 20th camera. More like me, I guess. But what would you do with your camera? What project would you shoot? Tell me in the comments down below. Would love to hear from you. And if you missed another video where I was photographing animals in a very beautiful place, maybe you want to watch this video next. Over in Istanbul, we met lots of cats and we got some lovely photos along the way.